Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into the microscopic origins of global pandemics. And look, right off the bat, everything we're about to cover, it's all grounded in verified data. We're talking the World Health Organization, the Predict Surveillance Program, EcoHealth Alliance, and peer-reviewed science from heavy hitters like Nature and Science. We aren't dealing in predictions or fear-mongering here. We're just looking purely at what the Earth, the biology, and the raw data are actively telling us.
So, quick question for you before we really get going. Where do you think the next pandemic actually begins? Seriously, drop your answer in the comments right now. Because long before the headlines hit, before those government alerts start flashing across our screens, these events always start somewhere highly specific and honestly, usually highly ordinary.
Picture this. There is a market open somewhere right now. It opens way before sunrise. The air is thick, it's close, vendors are stacking crates of live animals, chickens, civets, bats, reptiles, all pressed together in these really narrow wooden stalls. Buyers are just moving through before dawn, probably just thinking about the price of eggs or trying to beat the morning heat. But in that totally ordinary moment, something ancient, invisible, and incredibly patient is moving. It's looking for a new host.
Scientists actually call this biological crossing a spillover. Basically, it's when a pathogen, something capable of causing disease, crosses that species barrier and gets into a human host. The animal host, it doesn't die. Its immune system has co-evolved over thousands of years to tolerate what would easily kill us. But the human body has zero memory of this pathogen, none. We have absolutely no defense built up. And once that crossing happens, the clock starts ticking instantly. And to put the scale of this threat into perspective, the WHO has formally traced this mechanism, and their data is pretty staggering. An accelerating 75% of new human infectious diseases originate in animals. 75%. And that figure, it is not going down. Because as human populations push further and further into untouched ecosystems, that boundary between the human and animal worlds is shrinking incredibly fast. Now get this, the Global Virome Project estimates there are over 631,000 unknown viruses existing in wildlife right now that actually possess the potential to infect humans. Now obviously most of those will never reach us. They just lack the biological tools to cross that barrier. But the exact conditions that enable the rare few to make that jump, those conditions are growing by the day.
Let's move on and look at the geography of risk, specifically mapping out these high-risk interface zones.
You see, this risk doesn't just spread out evenly across a globe, it clusters. Researchers at EcoHealth Alliance actually spent years mapping these clusters, and they identified 4 converging conditions that make a region highly vulnerable to a viral emergence. First, you've got high wildlife biodiversity. That's your vast pathogen reservoir. Second, dense human populations to act as potential first hosts. Third, intensive livestock agriculture, which kind of bridges the gap between wildlife and people. And fourth, limited public health infrastructure, meaning those crucial early cases, they just get missed.
So when you mash all 4 of those factors together, they point directly to these specific scientifically mapped regions. We're talking southern China, the Mekong Delta, the Congo Basin, the Ganges Plains, and the margins of the Amazon. And guys, these are not guesses. The evidence consistently points to these high-risk interface zones. The exact conditions driving future spillovers are intensifying in these exact spots right now.
Which brings us to the fact that history is a pattern, taking us from 1918 to the present.
Understanding this geography is absolutely vital, because history isn't just a warning, it's a predictable pattern of these invisible crossings. The scientific consensus is totally settled here. A new pandemic pathogen will emerge. The only real question is where, and whether we can catch it in time. I mean, look at 1918. H1N1 influenza arrives in crowded, immunologically weakened military trenches, killing tens of millions. Jump to 1976. Ebola surfaces from bat populations in the Congo Basin. 2002, SARS-CoV-1 emerges from live animal markets in Guangdong, China. And then, 2019, SARS-CoV-2 reaches a catastrophic global scale. From the trenches of 1918 to the devastation of 2019, the core mechanism is literally identical.
But there's a really fascinating and frankly dangerous biological trade-off at play here. While Ebola burned incredibly hot and killed at a catastrophic rate, its extreme lethality actually ended up isolating it geographically. The victims collapsed before they could travel very far. But a virus with lower lethality, like SARS-CoV-2, that allows carriers to stay mobile and socially active for weeks. And a pathogen like that will completely ignore roads, borders, and security checkpoints.
Which brings us right back to those wet markets.
Both the WHO and the CDC note that these markets create the absolute perfect conditions for dangerous genetic mixing. When you have multiple, stressed live species sharing super close quarters, you get something called viral recombination. Basically, two different viral strains infect the exact same host cell, and their genetic material combines like a giant puzzle. This grants the new virus terrifying capabilities, like heightened transmissibility or the ability to evade our immune system that neither parent strain originally had.
Let's dig into the viral reservoir itself, and specifically, why bats drive so much of this risk.
If we're looking for the biological source of all this genetic material, research published in Nature confirms that bats are pretty much biologically unmatched as viral hosts. They harbor more zoonotic viruses, meaning diseases that can actually infect humans, than any other mammalian group on Earth. Plus, they're extraordinarily long-lived for their size, they roost in massive multi-species colonies numbering in the millions, and unfortunately, their droppings frequently contaminate human crops and water sources.
But their true danger? It really lies in their massive mobility. A single bat can travel hundreds of kilometers in just one night. And this extraordinary range is what directly connects the deepest, most remote viral reservoirs out in the wild right to the very edge of the human world.
And we are literally watching this dynamic play out right now in Bangladesh with the Nipah virus. Fruit bats contaminate raw date palm sap, villagers drink it, and it leads to outbreaks with a 60 to 100% fatality rate. Now, right now, Nipah doesn't spread efficiently between humans, but it is a stark reminder. Remember, molecular analysis shows that HIV crossed into humans via bushmeat hunting in the Congo Basin. That single unnoticed crossing went totally undetected for decades and silently triggered a global catastrophe that has killed over 40 million people.
So what happens when a virus does break out? Let's look at the global cascade effect, which is essentially a layer-by-layer collapse.
When a pathogen finally escapes, its impact cascades outward like a massive domino effect. First, you hit the clinical layer, where early misdiagnoses completely burn through our narrowing window for containment. Next is the supply layer. Because global pharmaceutical manufacturing is so highly concentrated, a localized outbreak almost instantly creates worldwide shortages. Third, the food layer, where agricultural disruptions trigger massive food insecurity. And finally, the institutional layer, where fear just fractures societal trust and completely breaks down international cooperation. A pathogen can move from a remote forest to a modern hospital in hours, instantly testing every single one of these layers.
Okay, so how do we actually stop it? Let's talk about surveillance and policy.
We are currently in the highest risk period for pathogen emergence ever recorded. Just consider this absolutely terrifying number. In 2019, the Global Health Security Index evaluated 195 countries on their preparedness. The average global score, 40.2 out of 100. Not a single country was fully ready. That leaves a massive, incredibly dangerous chasm in our global defenses, right where we need them the most.
Yet, the crazy part is, the detection technology we have is absolutely incredible. We've got the WHO's GOARN rapid response teams that can literally deploy in hours. We had the PREDICT consortium, which discovered over 900 novel viruses before it unfortunately got defunded in 2019. We even have portable metagenomic sequencing devices that can identify unknown pathogens in remote field conditions without even needing a lab. The technology is totally ready, but deploying it effectively, that depends entirely on unbiased global cooperation, political will, and sustained funding.
There's a quote here that really hits the nail on the head. A threat described as everywhere is managed nowhere. We just cannot rely on vague warnings that a pandemic could happen somewhere. We have to laser target our technological and financial efforts directly at those specific, highly active geographical interface zones we mapped earlier, places like the Mekong, the Congo, the Amazon.
Because ultimately, guys, preparedness is a political decision. Pandemics emerge from identifiable conditions shaped by human choices. Whether it's choosing to tightly regulate the live wildlife trade, stopping the rapid deforestation in the Amazon, or consistently funding international disease surveillance, these outcomes are completely determined by policy. And policy responds to public awareness.
The window to stop the next emergence hasn't closed yet. It is still open right now. SARS was contained. Nipah hasn't mutated for mass spread yet. Interrupting the cycle is entirely possible. So I want to leave you with this thought. If funding critical disease surveillance in those high-risk zones required cutting other global or national spending, what trade-offs were you actually willing to make to keep that window shut? Let me know in the comments. I really want to read every single one. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep questioning what's on the horizon.